Marcon continues to hold its stride in helping gain insights about marketing trends and future possibilities from eminent business leaders such as founders, CEOs, CMOs, and investors, all from the comfort of our home. This year, the key focus areas for Marcon were reaching out to new markets in the post-pandemic era, bringing to light the latest tools and trends in marketing, highlighting how technology goes hand in hand with marketing these days, and broadening customer base, which is no longer restricted to only urban or rural, realigning marketing strategies to match with current customer expectations. Before we kickstart this discussion, I would like to take this opportunity to quickly thank our partners, our cloud communication partner Root Mobile, our sessions partner IAB Tech Lab in partnership with Pubmatic, our gold partner LogicServe Digital, and our session partner Agraya, our knowledge partner Kantar. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our next session. This session is a very special fireside chat on the topic how tech and culture changes everything. For the same, I would like to welcome our esteemed panelists, Mr. Vivek Bhargava, co-founder, ProfitWheel. We welcome you, Vivek. Thank you for being a part of this session today. And along with him, Mr. Nigel Morris, Director, Admix. We welcome you, Nigel. Thank you for being a part of this session today.
Thank you.
I would now request Vivek to please take over.
Okay. Thanks, Garima. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with Nigel. And today we're doing it live on the Marketing Conclave. So, Nigel, I think one of the most fascinating stories I've heard is how Isobar was built, right? So from 2003 to 2008, 35 plus acquisitions, building 89 offices, 37 markets. I can't even imagine what it must have. How did you sell it to the board? How did you build it? Do you have a blueprint? And then I would like a segue that if you were given $1 billion today, if you were to build a network which is now going to last for the next 20 years, what changes would you make and how would you go about it? But this is a fascinating story. I would love to have the audience hear the story.
Thanks, Vivek. Hello, everyone. It's great to be part of this. It is an interesting, I'll tell you what, it's a relevant story as well as an interesting one because Isobar, as you say, was started in 2003 and we were really on the shoulder, I call it, or the cusp of the change from what was effectively Web 1 into Web 2.0. And today, we're on the cusp of the change from Web 2 into Web 3. And so I think there are, if I look back, there's some quite interesting lessons as well as it being a reasonably interesting story. And I suppose one huge difference, you asked the difference today as well, the huge difference then was it was possible to build something like Isobar within a corporate environment. And the way that Aegis operated at the time and the way I sold it to the board, it was almost where Aegis was operating as a PE. Because what I did was I gave a presentation which actually showed the adoption of the internet all the way through the dot-com crisis had gone up, usage had gone up, the industry had collapsed, but the consumer, every day, the internet as a platform was becoming more and more important to those consumers, and obviously, consumer marketing operates at that intersection between culture and technology. We'll talk about that a little bit more, which is why it does change everything. Anyway, I sold it to the board on the basis that because consumer adoption was going up, it was going to be more important to our clients, but also because the industry had collapsed, there was an opportunity, a business opportunity. And in effect, I got given what was the start was a relatively small amount of money to go out and start testing whether this would work. And the reality is things move so fast we never tested. And I always made sure that I was on a plane somewhere acquiring business. And another thing that is different then to today was, of course, the internet had developed so differently in every different market. Now, one thing is fascinating. I went to Japan and 1 week, and people were using their mobile phones to get onto the Narita Express to pay. In the US, only 20% of people knew there was even something called an SMS function.
Wow.
And adoption of mobile was tiny in the US. It just didn't exist as a discipline.
Yeah.
Whereas search was huge, whereas in Asia, search almost didn't exist. And so one of the things that we did was we put together a portfolio of businesses that actually covered a lot of the different disciplines within digital, from search to web build, obviously to media, but also the different businesses that we acquired in different countries to offer a global service were really quite radically different. And so the construct that we created was one that was almost like it was like a loose constellation. Right? And I used to call it, and I called it was the global garden of diversity. Right? But it was a very cellular structure that we built together on culture. And every year we would have an Isovar festival. We would get people collaborating, working in different ways. And it was incredibly exciting. And we went from, there were 205 people at the start of 2003 involved in some way in digital services within Aegis. We had 3,000 people by the end of 2005.
Wow.
Wow. And 6,000 people. And it was phenomenal. We went from 2%, I think, 2% of Aegis's revenue into over 30% by 2008. So there's this huge change that happened. And of course, what we caught the wave of this change from Web 1 to Web 2, where Web 1 really operated like a traditional media, pretty much. You're coming into a portal, going out of it. And then suddenly Web 2, the semantic web, was where everything became peer-to-peer, where content and information moved between people. And you got the emergence of the platforms and which harmonized that, captured all the data asymmetries, and actually made things operate easily. And, I think one of the things that is interesting to learn from that is, how do you make sure, as you're thinking about the disciplines, the services, the products that you're developing, whether you're a media owner, whether you're an agency, whether you have a digital products, whether you're a brand, is understanding again that intersection between what is it that you need to deliver and how is your external environment developing. Because again, as I would see it, that the idea that marketing operates at the intersection of technology and culture. Now, that was as true for television as it is for the metaverse.
Yeah.
If you think about it. Anyone that grows up with the technology doesn't think it's a technology. Whereas, television at one point was this amazing technology, but it was a technology. Right? Yeah. And of course, the cultural impact was that we watched programs together, and this streams of programs together that were fixed in time and place. And we watched them together, both as families and almost as cultures. And there was that. Web 2 broke that up. It broke content and separated it from time and place. What's going to happen now? And you got this, and we all now. Sorry, where's my phone? I can't remember. Oh, right. And we do that now. Yeah. It's a singular, much more individual consumption of media, right, and experience. And Web 3 is where this world, the digital world and the real world, is going to start to merge back and become a much more overall immersive experience where we can all be together. That's a point. I don't know whether that makes sense. The other big thing is that I could go around and I met amazing people like yourself.
Actually, Nigel, I'm going to share a story. This will be a good takeaway for the audience. So I was speaking in Admix San Francisco, and Nigel was one of the panelists. As luck would have it, he sat next to me. He had not come for any of the earlier rehearsals or those things. He came there and we had a conversation. He said, if you ever find yourself in my woods, give me a shout. Right? So I rerouted my flights, and those days, money was scarce. So rerouting flights from San Francisco to London instead of India, I had to sell my kidney to finance that flight. But I took that flight and I landed up in London, and I said, "Okay, I'm in your woods now, Nigel. Let's talk." And then within a few weeks, he was in India, and then it didn't get closed. But it took 4 years for it to close. But it started in that conversation.
Yeah.
In that, so I think as entrepreneurs, we have to see, right, there are going to be so many these inflection points that happen, and this is also culture and mindset, right? That you have to. The entrepreneur was asked that, how did you become successful? He said, I jumped at the right opportunities. He says, but like, how did you know which were the right opportunities? He says, I didn't. I just kept jumping. So
Yeah.
I think this is the mindset I think entrepreneurs had, and acquiring 35 different founding teams and CEOs, and even building that culture that it works cohesively together, because some problems cannot be solved by one company. So it requires a constellation of companies, right? So what I wanted to ask you was that if you were given, let's say, $1 billion, other than investing a chunk of that in ProfitWheel, what else would you acquire? And
Yeah.
how would the financial structure be different, right? Would it be a different financial structure that is required? Because the kind of mindsets entrepreneurs have, we talked about abundance mindset, product mindset versus a services mindset. So how would you change what you had to do in 2003? What would you do now from 2021 to 2025?
I mean, it's interesting. I think in 2021, it would be incredibly difficult. It'd just be impossible to do what we did within the corporate environment. And I mean, he just pretty much operated like, the way that we operate was almost like a corporate private equity fund in that respect. And and they gave me the opportunity to do that in an entrepreneurial way. Today, there's a number of businesses being pulled together, financed by private equity, and I think that there's good and bad in that. I think the interesting things for me myself, one of the things that we chat about is what are the criteria as well of how you put a constellation or a group together. I think one of the things is you have to have a really clear idea about what your vision is and where it really fits, both within the industry, but very, very much importantly, what's its role? Where does it add value to whom its customers is? So you talked about services versus product. If your proposition is that you are going to build the brands and build the businesses of your clients, you have to construct your business around those clients. And this is where I think the agencies have got, in a bit of a twist, because they want to become product companies, right, and sell products, right? But in the end, if you're a product company, if you're a SaaS company, that's got to be at the core of your DNA, and your whole corporate culture, your whole organizational structure, your operating model will be totally different if you're running a SaaS business versus a services business. And you need to really understand that from the start. And so, interestingly, just as an individual, I know it says I'm a director of Admix, which I am, but I have 28 startup investments. I'm on the board of 5 businesses. I'm chair of one. I'm on the board of the Guardian. In a few funds, and I'm running it like a portfolio, and I'm still betting with my own money, and I'm still in no single investment have I made based upon the financial model or based upon financial projections. I've based it upon fundamentally the founders, the idea that they've got, the vision that they've got of the value that they will create in their market. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a synthetic media SaaS business. It doesn't really matter whether it's Admix, which is how gaming is going to go into the metaverse and how we're going to monetize that for the creator economy. Or Fanbytes, which is an influencer business. And I think the influencer is going to be huge within Web3, much bigger than it's been, and could be more valuable, I think, even than the media as such. Yeah, all of those things, right? I'm looking as an individual, going, how do each of those individually add value? And then the guiding concept for me is, do they have an impact greater than just like a financial return? Are they making a positive impact? But that's easy for me because I'm just an individual. But if you're putting an agency group together, you actually have to have your clients' businesses and how they will grow at the heart of it. If it's a product, you have to really understand who are your customers, what is your market, what is the unique difference that you can offer, and then how do you structure and build a culture and build a business engine, right, that actually delivers value. If you do that, the money will come for you. It doesn't matter whether it's VC money, PE money, strategic corporate money, you'll get money. And the one slight criticism I have of the environment at the moment is it's too VC driven in terms of a process of, your pre-seed, seed, Series A, B, and it's just this juggernaut of things. It almost doesn't matter what's happening, right? Whereas I think the businesses that really understand why they're doing something and then how they're going to do it. I mean, you're starting ProfitWheel, right? Talk us through how you've thought about that. With all your experience and background of building a services business, you're now building more of a product business. Yeah. What are the differences?
Yeah. So I think it's a very interesting question, Nigel. If I look at my generation, who's, let's say, mid-40s in India, we had experienced a scarcity generation before us. So they wanted stability of jobs, so they would prefer a company, they would get a job in a government outfit where you would get lifetime employment. Then if you take my generation, we wanted to work for companies like Infosys and Tata's because it'll give you stability plus some growth, right? But if you take today, you're coming from the abundance mindset where people, like I've made about 25 odd investments. The risk that the entrepreneurs are taking to build product companies is there in the air. So we are going to create 100 plus unicorns, right? But it's because most of the entrepreneurs are building product companies and not services companies. So if you take one of the most successful companies which we really respect in India is Infosys. But Infosys is worth $100 billion and employs 200